Perfect.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to Life of Birch. This is Birch, and I'm here to tell you that birthday dreams do come true. Today is my 30th birthday, and I have finally bought a Rebel 500 after searching for months to find the right one after selling my Rebel 300 at the end of last summer. I didn't actually get it today. I actually got it 2 days ago, but as it turns out, the audio on my GoPro failed as I was doing the test ride. Definitely true. On the 300, that did not happen. So, unfortunately, I have to redo things a little bit, but that brings us to here in the future, where I already own the bike. So here she is, a beautiful 2017 Honda Rebel 500 ABS model with less than 1,000 miles on her. We'll start things off today with a quick walk around of the bike, just so I can show the bike to you and show you what kind of condition it's in. Then we'll hop on the bike and take it for a ride, and I'll give you a quick story just of how I even found the bike in the first place and came to buy it. And then while we're on the ride, I'll also go over all of my first impressions that I had of the bike, not only of the bike itself, but how it compares to the 300 after owning the Rebel 300 for a few months. All right, let's get straight to it. Not to state the obvious, but of course this is the gloss black model, so it comes with the gloss black painted tank and the gloss black painted rear fender. The bike is already blacked out. You know, there's not a lot of chrome parts on the engine, the exhaust, the wheels, so having the all black paint scheme really sets this bike off well. Not sure how well you'll be able to tell through video, but the bike is very clean overall. Not a scratch anywhere on the paint that I have seen. It's also nice because lots of the times these bikes will start getting a little bit of corrosion or rust on the header pipes. This does not have that yet. Overall, the bike is totally stock except for this little rear rack on the fender here, which is nice. You can throw a 6-pack on there, your groceries, whatever, and you're good to go. And then it does have some aftermarket graphics that the previous owner added here, as well as some residue from rim tape that they had put on and they had started peeling off, but didn't finish that, so I just got to finish taking that and the graphics off. And really the only defect, I guess you could say, that this bike came with is it has a scratch on the exhaust here. That's super typical with these bikes because this bazooka exhaust just sticks out so far that it's bound to scuff up against something. That's not a huge deal because that exhaust isn't going to last long on here anyway. And then as we come around to the other side, you can see she's still nice and shiny, not a scratch anywhere on her. Still have some more of the rim tape here that I got to take off, but like I said, the rim tape and the graphic on the other side, that's nothing that a little Goo Gone can't handle, so that's not a huge deal. They've already taken off the warning labels on the tank, so that's good. I was going to do that also. And then I did notice, you can barely see it, probably won't even see it in the video, there's two little teeny dings here, which is probably just from something being strapped down. I'm not sweating that at all. So as you can see, this bike is nearly spotless. A couple hits of Goo Gone on the vinyl stuff and she'll be good as new. Alright, so now that you've seen the bike, let's hop on it and take it for a spin. Alright, let's hit the road. So as I mentioned before, and as I'm sure you're already aware if you've watched the channel at all, I previously owned a 2017 Rebel 300 for a few months before selling it to a buddy. But ever since I sold that bike, I've been dying to get a Rebel 500, not only to see how it compares to the 300, but also because with the extra added power, it seems like the kind of bike that I could get more use out of. So pretty much ever since I sold the 300, I have been looking for the right 500 to buy. I had seen a couple of them that seemed promising, but you know, as with anything, most of the people kind of expected more money out of their bike than I wanted to pay. I had a certain threshold that I was looking to stay under, which was kind of hard to do since these are still newer bikes, but you know, I was determined, so I kept looking, and I actually found one bike that was super promising, low miles, looked to be in brand new condition, and the price was agreeable. The only issue was that it was 2.5 hours away. I really did not want to have to go 2.5 hours away to check a bike out and then have to ride it all the way back. But still, I planned on possibly going to pick that bike up today on my birthday. And as it turns out, 3 days ago on Sunday night, I was searching through a Facebook group that I'm a part of that's called Honda Rebel 300 and 500, and it's a great group. Obviously, if you're watching this video, you have some sort of interest in these bikes, so definitely check that group out. But anyway, I was on there and I saw one of the members post a question asking, hey guys, is it a good time to sell or should I hold out since there's all of the kind of economic uncertainty going on? So since I'm looking to buy, I decided to see what people were saying, and one of the people asked where she lived and where she would be selling the bike, and she said Maryland. That's where I live, so it piqued my interest, and I figured, you know what, I'll reach out to her and see if she's any closer than this person who's 2.5 hours away, see if we can work something out. Long story short, I reached out to her, and not only did she live closer to me than the other person, but as it turns out, she lived literally half a mile away from me. I could have walked to go check the bike out if I wanted to. So anyway, we ended up agreeing on a price, and the very next day I went out to take a look at the bike. She and her husband were both nice as could be, super nice people. The nice thing too is that lots of the times when it comes to motorcycles, if you go to look at them, people are kind of reluctant to let you take it for a test drive, especially with a bike like this. Lots of times it's a beginner and they don't want you crashing the bike and then not buying it. Fortunately, not only were she and her husband more than willing to let me go on a test ride, but he actually came out with me and we did a quick lap through a local neighborhood and then hopped on the highway. And I gotta say, only a couple minutes into the test ride and I was already sold and knew that I was taking it home. So we came back. I handed over the cash that I had brought with me. We signed all the papers and I was on my way. So it's just crazy because it's really one of those everything happens for a reason moments. You know, I've been looking for months for this bike, and as it turns out, the perfect bike for me was right under my nose, a half mile away. And that couple got probably the easiest sale of their entire lives. She didn't even have to post the bike for sale, didn't have to get it ready or anything like that, just asked a question and I saw it and she had the cash in her hand the next day. So I just love win-win situations, and that's the definition of one. But that kind of ties back into why I was saying the graphics were only on one side of the fender and the rim tape wasn't all the way off. She hadn't even gotten done getting the bike ready to sell yet. And then I came and bought it, so that's not a big deal. I'll just finish taking that off, but I'm just happy to have the bike. Now let's talk first impressions. So I hopped on the bike and it felt a lot like the Rebel 300. Sitting it up, you can tell right away that it's nice and light. It's going to be easy to maneuver. And it was also interesting because lots of people ask about the weight difference in the fact that the Rebel 500 weighs about 40 pounds more than the Rebel 300. And I gotta be honest, when I sat on the bike and even in the time that we were riding around, I didn't really feel that weight difference at all. It's still just as light and flickable and maneuverable feeling as the 300 is. And I was telling the previous owner that I think lots of that has to do with the fact that the added weight is in the engine. So it's down low, so it doesn't really affect how it feels moving around. If the weight was up high, then yeah, it would feel heavier because it would want to lean more and things like that. But honestly, if you're letting the weight be a main concern between the 300 and 500, I did not notice that much of a difference at all. As strange as it is, I'll tell you the first thing that I noticed about the bike when I threw a leg over it and started riding was actually this little cover right here that sticks out and hits your leg. See, it sticks out here and hits your leg a little bit, and it's not super bothersome, but something to think about. You don't get that with the 300 because the engine is so much smaller and doesn't stick out as far. And then the next thing that I noticed right away as we were pulling onto the first major road was that this bike really does have a lot more get up and go than the 300. Don't get me wrong, the 300 is super peppy and and can handle its own around town, but the 500 has so much more oomph to it, and I could tell immediately that it would be more capable for kind of handling more all-around travel and not having to worry as much about having the power to do it. And I gotta say, the first time I opened up this after experiencing the 300, it just put a smile right across my face. It's not the fastest thing in the world, but it has enough power to have a lot of fun. So then as we were going through the neighborhood, it was a typical neighborhood, you know, stop signs every now and then, some straightaways, some speed bumps, some turns, and you know, it just reminded me how incredibly light and flickable this bike feels. You can take turns seamlessly with no problem. It handles well. The brakes are okay. Nothing to write home about. That might be one of the things that I upgrade in the future, but they get the job done. I will say though that when we were going through the neighborhood, that was the first time that I was reminded of how absolutely crappy the stock seat on these things is. I'm not exactly the thickest boy ever, but the seat just doesn't really feel big enough for me, and it's also extremely firm, so that's something to consider. I mean, I already knew that going into this, so I already expected to buy an upgraded seat for it, but the first speed bump that I hit, I was reminded of how firm the seat is, and also the front suspension is very soft, and the rear suspension doesn't really feel soft, but definitely jars you a little bit. Oh, why did I do that? Now, it's not a top quality bike or anything like that, so you don't expect it to have top of the line suspension, just pointing that out as one of the first impressions. And then after we went through the neighborhood, we came out and merged onto one of the main highways around here, which has a speed limit of about 55 or 60. I gotta say, it merged onto the highway with absolutely no issues. The 300 I would have had wrung out like its life depended on it in order to merge onto the highway. The 500 handled it like it was nothing, and I went to shift up one time and it was actually already in 6th gear, and I was like, wait a second, did we just merge onto the highway in 6th gear? Because that's pretty impressive. Just from that, I could tell that it was going to be a lot more capable on the highway, and I was not let down. It was cruising at, you know, 60, 65 with no problems. The 300 will do that also, but with the 300, I had my wrist cocked to like pulling the throttle hard in order for it to keep up at highway speeds like that, and it did it, but not as easy as the 500. So I think it was that moment that I knew, like, yep, I'm taking this bike home with me for sure. And I don't really have any first impressions on the ABS feature yet, fortunately. Hopefully I'll never have to use that feature, but it's always great to have it. It's actually a feature that I wasn't even set on when I was looking for a bike. It's just kind of a bonus that this bike happens to have them, so it's really nice to have that kind of extra peace of mind. And I guess the last thing that I'll touch on right now as I'm riding around and it came to my mind is the shifting points. For the 500, it's nice because it can handle everything from around town to on the highway, and has a little bit more power behind it, so I don't find myself shifting quite as often. Whereas with the 300, not that I'm trying to make this all a comparison from the 300 to the 500, because I'll go into that more in depth in another video, but with the 300, I had to shift constantly. It felt like I was shifting every 5 seconds, whereas with the 500, you know, if I'm cruising in a neighborhood, I can put it in 2nd gear and just keep it there the whole time, or 3rd gear and keep it there the whole time. I'm not fighting to find the right gear quite as much as I was with the 300. So in summary, my first impressions of this bike were way better than I expected them to be. I loved my 300, but it was just time for it to go. The 500 though, I could see myself hanging on to this for a long time. And that's kind of a good segue into the fact that because I'm going to be holding onto this bike for a lot longer than the 300, I have some big plans for it. Not necessarily, you know, huge plans, but there's a lot of modifications that I'd like to do to this and lots of trips that I'd like to take it on. Honestly, I was so excited that I found this bike that before I even went to look at it, the night before, I had already ordered an upgraded 2-person seat, and I also ordered the passenger seat kit so that I would have have passenger pegs for it as well, so I can see how it performs with my wife on the back. So as far as plans are concerned, I already have the seat on the way, I already have passenger pegs on the way, I already have exhaust on the way, I have a few other odds and ends coming for it, and honestly I'm considering even doing a complete color change on the bike. And of course, with all of the upgrades that I do comes videos. I already have a list of probably 10 videos that I'm planning to make about this bike and about the way that it performs versus the 300 and just so much stuff. I just couldn't be happier. So I know I've already said it, but I'm going to say it again. If you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and smash that subscribe button because you don't want to miss out on any of this. I'm excited to take you guys along for the ride. That's going to do it for this video, but as always, thank you so much for watching, and of course, we'll catch you on the next one. Peace!